You got the review and the number they gave you was 3%, and you smiled. You said, "Thank you." You walked back to your desk and you did the math in your head, and you already knew, before the meeting, probably before the quarter, that 3% was coming. It's always 3%, and you told yourself it's fine. It's something, at least it's not nothing. But somewhere underneath the gratitude was a different feeling, a quieter one. The feeling of someone who just accepted less than they were worth, thanked the person who gave it to them. This is about that feeling. And what it's been costing you. Let's go back further. Think about when you took the job, the offer came and you negotiated. Maybe, or you didn't, because the market felt uncertain, or the job felt like the right move, or you just wanted it to be done. And whatever number they gave you became the baseline, the foundation everything else was built on. Every raise since then has been a percentage of that original number. 3% of too little is still too little, compounded. And you've been compounding on that baseline for 2 years, or 4 years, or 7, and the gap between what you're earning and what you would be earning if you'd started higher or moved sooner is a number most people never calculate because the calculation is too uncomfortable to look at directly. Look at it with me for a second. Say you took the job at $62,000 when the market rate for your role was $72,000. You didn't know. Or you knew and didn't push, or you pushed a little and accepted the counter. That $10,000 gap, compounded annually at 3% raises over 7 years, is not $10,000. It's the difference between where you are and where a parallel version of you, same skills, same work, different negotiation, would be, and that parallel version of you isn't at a different company. They're at the same company, they just started the conversation differently. Or they left at year 3 when the offers came in and they came back in at a new baseline. And now they're $30,000 ahead of you with no explanation you can point to, no difference in performance, just a compounding gap that started at a number you said yes 2 years ago, and you're still saying yes. Think about the last time a recruiter reached out. What happened in your body when you saw the message? There was probably a flicker of something, interest, curiosity, the possibility of a different number, and then the counterweight came. The relationships you've built, the security of knowing how this place works. The project you're in the middle of, the timing isn't right. You're too close to vested, you're up for a promotion. And the recruiter message went unanswered or got a polite decline, and the flicker went out, and you went back to the work and told yourself you were being smart, being strategic, being loyal. Loyalty, that word, let's look at it directly. Your company does not have a loyalty budget. There is no line item that says, reward the people who stayed. The people who got promoted above you, some of them deserved it, some of them were newer than you, came in from outside at a higher title, a higher salary, with none of your institutional knowledge and none of your history, and got placed above you on an org chart you helped build. That has happened to you or near you. You know exactly what I'm talking about. And when it happened, someone said something about external talent and market rates and needed skills, and you absorbed it and kept working, and the quiet resentment joined the background hum that's been there for a while now. Because here's the thing nobody tells you directly, the thing that's true and uncomfortable and costs you money every year. You don't reckon with it. Your employer's incentive is to pay you the minimum required to keep you. Not the minimum required to hire you, that number passed years ago. The minimum required to prevent you from leaving. And if your behavior has consistently communicated that you will not leave, that the relationships and the comfort and the vesting schedule and the risk aversion are stronger than any competing offer, they will pay you accordingly. Not out of malice, out of rationality. That is how compensation systems work. The employee who signals flight risk gets the retention package. The employee who signals loyalty gets the 3%. You've been signaling loyalty, and this is where it gets interesting. Because the story you've been telling yourself, that tenure matters, that relationships are capital, that loyalty pays off long-term, that story has a specific texture that feels like wisdom and functions like a trap. It's not entirely wrong, Relationships are real. Institutional knowledge is real. There are environments where long-term employees are genuinely valued and compensated accordingly. But those environments are the exception, not the assumption. And the assumption, the default belief that staying is safe, that leaving is risky, that the company will eventually recognize what you've contributed, that assumption has a price that shows up in your bank account every 2 weeks. The game changed and nobody told you. In the labor market of the last 20 years, the primary mechanism for wage growth has not been raises, it has been job changes. Study after study, across industries, shows that people who change jobs every 2 to 3 years earn significantly more over the course of their career than people who stay, not slightly more. Significantly more, the average raise at job change is between 10 and 20%. The average raise for staying is 3%. Compounded over a decade, that gap doesn't just represent salary, it represents retirement contributions, savings rate, lifestyle options, the entire financial architecture of your 40s and 50s. And you were never told this in school. Your parents probably stayed at jobs for 20 years and called it stability. The system was different then. The loyalty compact, stay, and we will take care of you, existed, briefly, for a generation that is largely retired now. For you, it does not exist. Not the way you were taught to expect it. Nobody taught you this. But here's what nobody tells you about money. The most expensive financial decision most people make is not a bad investment or a too big house or consumer debt run up in a bad year. It's the salary they're not earning, the raise that never came. The role that should have been a promotion and became a lateral move with a new title and a $4,000 increase. The market rate for their skills that they've never actually tested because testing it feels disloyal and risky and like more disruption than it's worth. The people who build real wealth in the professional class, the ones who have options at 50 in a way most people don't, they treated their career as a market, not a relationship. They understood that their skills have a market price, and that the only way to know the price is to test it, and that testing it periodically, not recklessly, not constantly, but deliberately, every 2 to 3 years, is not disloyalty. It's financial hygiene. The wealthy don't think about their career the way you were taught to think about yours. They don't think in terms of loyalty and tenure and what the company owes them. They think in terms of what the market will pay for their capability right now, and they keep that number current. They know what their skills are worth outside the walls they currently work in because they ask, because they stay in conversation with the market, because they treat every job as a current chapter rather than a permanent home. And when a chapter ends, when the growth stops, when the ceiling appears, when the market offers them more than their employer is willing to match, they move. Without drama, without guilt, as a financial decision that a rational person makes when the numbers support it. Most people have never made a career decision that way. Most people have made career decisions based on comfort, fear, relationship, and the path of least resistance. And the cumulative cost of that approach is sitting in the gap between what they earn and what they could be earning, multiplied by every year the gap has been open. Let's talk about a man named Andre. Andre is 44. He has been with the same company for 11 years. He is well-liked. He is good at his job. He has been promoted twice in 11 years, once at year 3, once at year 7, and each promotion came with a meaningful raise that felt like validation. Between promotions, 3% annually. He is currently earning $94,000. When he ran a compensation analysis last year, the first one he'd run in a decade, he discovered that the market rate for his role, his experience level, and his industry was between $118,000 and $130,000. He had been earning $94,000 while the market had moved to $124,000 without him. The gap was $30,000 a year. Over the last 4 years alone, while he was being a good employee and a loyal team member, the cost of his loyalty was over $100,000 in earnings he didn't receive. Not because his company was evil, because his company had no reason to give him market rate while he was willing to work for less. Andre stayed. He asked for a raise. They gave him 8%, an unusually generous offer, he was told. He is now earning $101,520, $22,000 below market, and the cycle begins again. But there's something darker underneath this. Here's the first principle. Your salary is a negotiation, not a recognition. And you've been waiting for recognition. The common belief is that good work gets rewarded. That if you perform, if you contribute, if you show up and deliver and build the relationships and do the extra things that nobody asks you to do, the compensation will follow. And this belief is so emotionally natural, so aligned with how we understand fairness to work, that most people never question it. They just keep doing good work and waiting. And the waiting becomes the strategy, and the strategy produces 3%. Here's why it fails. Compensation is not a performance metric. It's a market metric. Your company does not ask, what is this person worth? They ask, what is the minimum we need to pay this person to keep them performing at an acceptable level? Those questions produce different answers. The first question, what is this person worth, would require your employer to survey the market for your skills and pay you accordingly. Some companies do this, most don't, unless they're trying to retain someone who has demonstrated they will leave. The second question, what's the minimum to keep them, produces a number based on their estimate of your alternatives and your attachment to staying. If your alternatives look weak and your attachment looks strong, the number is low, simple as that. The identity shift is from I want to be recognized for my contribution to I am a skilled professional and my skills have a market price that I am responsible for knowing and pursuing. That person doesn't wait for recognition. That person creates leverage by knowing the number and being willing to have the conversation, or being willing to take the interview, or being willing to accept the offer when it's better than what staying provides. And what happens next is the part most people miss. Here's the second principle. The job change is not the risk, the staying is the risk. This is the inversion that almost nobody has made. When you think about leaving your job, you feel risk, the unknown, the new environment. The possibility of failure, of culture mismatch, of a boss who's worse than the one you have. The possibility that the grass isn't greener and you made a mistake, and now you're the new person in an unfamiliar place having given up the security of the known. That risk is real, it exists. Some job changes go badly. Some new environments are worse than the one you left. But here's the risk you're not measuring, the risk of staying. The risk of another year at market minus 30%. The risk that your skills, kept in one environment, in one technology stack, in one set of problems, slowly drift towards specialization in a company rather than transferable expertise in a market. The risk that your network, limited to one organization for 7, 8, 9 years, becomes thin in exactly the moments when you need it to be robust. The risk that when the layoff comes, and in most industries, the layoff eventually comes, you are suddenly in the job market after a decade away, with a salary expectation calibrated to a company that no longer employs you, competing against people who have been in the market recently and know how to interview and have relationships outside one building. The people who get hurt most in layoffs are the ones who stayed longest. Not because they were the weakest performers, because they were the most institutionally comfortable and the least market-ready. Staying is a risk. You've just been calling it safety because the risk is slower and less visible than the risk of leaving. This is where it gets interesting. Here's the third principle. Every year you stay at below market salary is a decision you are making actively, not passively. This is the one that lands differently than the others. Because there's a way of thinking about your current salary as something that's happening to you. The company pays what they pay. The raises are what they are. The market is what it is and you're in it. That positions you as a passive recipient of circumstances rather than an active decision maker. And that framing is comfortable because it removes agency, and removing agency removes responsibility. And removing responsibility feels better than acknowledging that you are, in fact, choosing this. But you are choosing it. Every day you don't respond to the recruiter is a choice. Every quarter you don't run a market compensation analysis is a choice. Every year you don't have a direct conversation with your manager about market rate and your salary expectations is a choice. Every interview you decline because the timing isn't right is a choice. You are not trapped, you are comfortable. And comfort and trapped feel the same from the inside, which is the whole problem. The person who earns market rate is not the person who was luckier than you. They are the person who treated their compensation as their own responsibility rather than their employer's obligation, who measured themselves against the market rather than against their own history, who made the uncomfortable ask and had the uncomfortable conversation and accepted the uncomfortable disruption of change when the numbers supported it. That discomfort, that's the only thing standing between where you are and where the market says you could be. Here's the truth about what's been happening. You have been subsidizing your employer. Every year you work for below market compensation, you are transferring wealth from your household to theirs. You are doing $124,000 worth of work for $94,000 and calling it loyalty. The $30,000 that isn't in your paycheck is in their margin. It funds their operation, it improves their financial picture, and they are grateful for it in the way that any organization is grateful for a resource it receives at below market cost, but gratitude is not compensation. Project it forward, that $30,000 annual gap, invested over 10 years at historical returns, is somewhere between $450,000 and $530,000. That is the number your loyalty cost you. Not the sentiment of it, the actual, compounded, dollar amount that your career produced for someone else instead of you. And that number will keep growing every year the gap stays open. 5 years from now, you will either be earning what you're worth, or you will be explaining to yourself why you're still not. Both stories feel true, only one of them changes the number. So here's where you are. Two paths, neither of them is the one you imagined when you took the job and thought staying was the plan. The first path is continuation. You keep delivering. You keep waiting for the recognition that the system was not designed to give you. You get the 3% and you tell yourself it's fine and it's something and the relationships are real and the stability matters and maybe next year the promotion comes. The anxiety stays at a manageable hum. The gap between what you earn and what the market pays stays open or widens as the market moves without you. In 10 years you are still there, or you're somewhere new because they finally downsized you out, and either way the number is lower than it should have been for a decade. The second path requires you to do something that feels almost physically uncomfortable. Treat your career as a market transaction rather than a loyalty relationship. It means knowing your market rate this week. Not your sense of your market rate, the actual number pulled from compensation data, from recruiter conversations, from the interviews you take not because you're leaving but because you need to know what the market will offer. It means having the direct conversation with your manager about compensation and market positioning. It means being willing to take the offer when the offer is better. It means building a relationship with the market outside your current employers so that when you need leverage, the leverage exists. That is a different identity than the one you've been inhabiting. It requires letting go of the story that good work speaks for itself. It doesn't, not in the compensation system you're actually operating in. The question isn't whether your work is worth more, it is. You already know that. The question is whether you're going to keep giving it away at a discount. What's your answer?